So the question is top k frequent elements. Given an integer array nums and an integer k, return the k most frequent elements. You may return the answer in any order. So let's take the first example. So here there are 3 ones, 2 twos and 1 3. So we need to return the k most frequent elements. So the first frequent element is 1 and the second most frequent element is 2. So we need to return 1 and 2. So given this example, 1 occurs 1 time, 2 occurs 2 times, 3 occurs 3 times and 4 occurs 1 time. So here this is the value and this is the frequency. So we can see 3 is the number that occurred most times. So we go for 3 and the next 2 occurs the most time after 3. So we return 2, 3 and 2 will be going to be our answer. So our first method will be sorting. So the step 1 will be to count the frequency of every element. We can use a map data structure here to count the frequency of every element and then store it. So now what we need to do is to sort this, but there is no inbuilt function in map to sort any elements. So what we will do is we will create a pair of int comma int that will be stored inside a vector. Here the first element of the pair will be denoting the frequencies and the second element will be denoting the value. And we know that vector gives us a sort functionality, and given it's a pair of int, it will sort based on the first element of the pair, that is the frequency here. So step 1 will be to create a map. The map will store the value and its corresponding frequencies. So for 1 it will be 3, for 2 it will be 2 and for 3 it will be 1. Now we will be creating a vector of pair of int comma int and add the map values into the vector. So this is what our vector will look like. Now when we sort this, so as we know that k value is 2, so we need the 2 most frequent elements. So here while traversing we can traverse and just pick the I dot second value. So here and here for 2 values, for this will be first value, this will be the second value. So then we can return 1 and 2 as the answer. So the time complexity for this solution will be O of n log n, that is taken by the sorting algorithm here, and the space complexity is going to be O of n, that is taken by the map as well as the vector of pair of int comma int that we are making. So first of all, we will be creating an unordered map of int comma int to store the frequencies. Now we will traverse into the nums array and increase the count of every element. Then we will create a vector of pair int comma int, let's call it array, and now we will traverse into the map and push the second value followed by the first value into the array. Now we will sort the array using the inbuilt sort function. Now we will create answer variable and now we will traverse for k times into the array as the first k element are the answer that we need. So we will push the elements into the answer. So the more optimal way to approach this question is to use a data structure called as heap. So in this solution as well, the first step will be to count the frequency of every element and store it in a map. Now the second step here is rather than using a vector of int comma int, we will be using a data structure that is called as heap. So there are two types of heap, a min heap and a max heap. So the max heap will always store the maximum element at the top and the min heap will always store the minimum element at the top. So here we want the maximum frequency, so we are going with the max heap here. So we will create a heap So this heap will also be of type pair of int comma int, as there is as this is the most optimal way to store a frequency as well as its element. So taking the first example here, this data is going to be stored in a map. So what we will do is to pass each of the element into the max heap. So it will create something like 3 comma 1 will be at the top, and below that will be everything that is smaller. So 2 comma 1 and 1 comma 3. So we need the two most frequent elements. So we know that the most frequent element will always be at the top. So what we'll do is to pop this one and store it in our answer. So 1 will be stored in our answer. So 1 will be stored in our answer, and this will be a new heap. Now the frequency 2 is at the top and the frequency 1 is at the bottom. So we have at the top element the second most frequent element. So it is 2. So we'll store it in the answer. Complexity for this solution will be O of n log k, where n is the number of elements in the array and k is the number of frequencies we want to store. And the space complexity will be O of n plus k, as we are storing n elements in the unordered map for counting the frequencies and k elements into the max heap. So like before, we'll create an unordered map of n comma n to store the frequencies. Now we will traverse into the input nums array and increase the frequency of each element that we see there into the map. Now we create a max heap using the priority queue that will be of type pair of int comma int, where we'll be storing the frequency and the corresponding value to it. So now we will traverse into the map and push the second element corresponding to its first element into the heap. Now we'll create the answer variable. Now we'll be running a loop for k times as we need the top k elements, and in the answer we will push the second element of the top of the max heap that has the most frequency and then pop it, and the rest will be done by heapify.